Today's video is sponsored by our very own Spring store, but more about that later.
Hi everybody and welcome to Simply Scuba. In today's deep dive we're thinking about how old you should be to start scuba diving, because it is a good debate online and a very important consideration if you're planning to get your kids into scuba diving one day. Now there are plenty of reasons for getting kids into scuba diving as early as possible. Kids are great at absorbing concepts, so they take to things much easier, and the earlier you can get them into the water, the more comfortable they'll be in later life. Diving also teaches them actual practical uses for the maths and physics and biology that they're learning about in school in a real world setting. Children involved in scuba diving also have a tendency to have a better view about natural conservation, about the natural environment, so it is good to get them into the water as soon as possible. On the flip side of things though, we still don't exactly know what effect scuba diving has on adult bodies, let alone children and adolescents. And we're not about to run experiments on children to see how different depths and times affect their tissues and growth in later life. Some kids just aren't up to the task neither. They just aren't mentally or physically up to the challenge and demands of scuba diving. And that's something that you, your kids, and your dive instructor really do need to sit down and assess, because you don't want to rush to things and find out the hard way if you're wrong. The first thing is, when do the training agencies start to offer training courses for children? Because it's most likely that they've spent a long time thinking about appropriate ages to start kids off. About the youngest course to start kids out is around 8 years old, but these tend to be confined to swimming pools with an instructor only, to get them used to the equipment and just practicing some fun tasks in the water. But it won't lead to an official certification where they can dive by themselves out in open water, or with any other just basic scuba diver in open water. It's only ever in the pool with an instructor with a maximum depth of 2 or 3 meters to minimize any risk of decompression problems. When they reach 10 years old, they can then start to enroll in their first course, where they end up with a cert card to dive in open water. But the course is usually much the same as the adult course, but with more conservative depths when you actually get into the water. The kids course, if they're under 15, is usually called the junior, whatever the course is called. All of the bookwork and the exams are exactly the same as the adult course, but yeah, during training and once qualified, they have stricter depth limits, so they can't go down as deep until they certify as an adult, whatever the course is called. So when you're signing your child up for a course, it's important to have a serious discussion with your instructor and with your kid as well, involve them to be sure that they are up to the task. So for some agencies, 8 is the youngest that they can start out at least trying it out, but 10 is the youngest where they can start an official course. But in there is always a caveat where the instructor can at any time determine if the child is not ready or not just up for it, because not all 10-year-olds are the same. Now, we've already talked about how little we actually know about how diving is affecting children's bodies, and it's important to remember that. Children are not small adults, as Dr. Reader puts it. They're still growing and they're changing, and there are some serious anatomical issues that some children can face just because their little bodies haven't developed enough yet. The first one is in their inner ears. A lot of children cannot equalize their ears properly because their eustachian tubes can be flattened and small compared to an adult, making it actually impossible at times for kids, even up to the ages of 12 and over, to actually equalize. So they're not going to understand why they're doing exactly what you've told them to do, but their ears still hurt, so they could continue down thinking that, okay, maybe this is just how it feels. There's also something in kids' hearts called a PFO. It's effectively a hole in a section of their heart that usually closes itself pretty early on in infancy, but on some children it can take a little bit longer for this to close, and it goes undiagnosed because otherwise they're perfectly healthy. And because it creates a bypass between the left and the right side of the heart, blood can actually bypass the lungs, and we don't really know how much that can affect their decompression because everything needs to come out through the lungs. Kids can also experience pain and discomfort different ways to adults and understand when something is going wrong, so they might just go along with it and just risk hurting themselves. If they don't completely trust others, the strangers like the instructor or a dive master, they might keep pain and discomfort a secret, and even if they do tell somebody, they may not be able to communicate that problem to that other person properly. Kids also tend to be smaller than adults, a lot smaller physically, and while they may be physically up to carrying their own equipment and moving themselves through the water adequately, you have to remember that they are the second half of a buddy pair, and they are the one that is responsible for getting you out of trouble if something should happen to you. Moving a fully grown, unresponsive person underwater is not easy, trust me, and the smaller you are, the harder it's going to be.
Calling all scuba divers want to stand out of the non-diving crowd? Do you want people to know that you're a scuba diver? Well, then our very own Spring store will help you out. We stock tees, stickers, hoodies, phone cases, even mugs that all have a scuba diving theme. From our super popular emotional Bolt Snap tee, our Cave Shark sticker to our Scuba Dude hoodie, we have something for everyone. And our range is becoming more eco-friendly each month thanks to Spring's eco-friendly range. Each order is printed fresh, which means less waste, less plastic, and it's better for the environment, and also helps battle clothing waste as well. To view our full range, just click on the link pinned in the comments. And hey, why not treat yourself to 10% off your total order with the discount code DSN10. That's DSN10. Okay, back to the video.
Not all children are the same, and they certainly don't mature all at the same time. It's not something where they hit 10 years old and they're suddenly mature. Some kids mature enough to understand what's going on and what's expected from them while scuba diving, but others simply don't have the maturity, the discipline or attention span to be scuba divers at certain ages. Kids spend a lot of their academic career just learning and repeating procedures, so the exams and the skills in swimming pools can be very easy for them, but when things don't go exactly according to the plan, you need to be sure that they will be able to calmly and logically work that problem. They can't stop and ask questions underwater, so you need to be sure that they can take in all of the information before the dive that they need and assimilate it so that when they encounter a problem in the water, they do the right thing. Personally, I don't have kids yet, but from what I gather, a lot of being a parent involves saying no when they go to do something silly. You need to be sure that they won't go and touch something dangerous or break something valuable in the water because they thought, it might be a bit of fun. They need to be sensible enough to know where that line is, and you kind of need to be the one to decide where that line is. Scuba diving equipment is usually made for adults. Kids grow out of things really quickly, so the manufacturers of scuba diving equipment don't usually make anything or a great range in children's sizes because people aren't going to buy gear that size, especially expensive gear that the kid's just going to grow out of in a season or two. So kids' dive gear is usually pretty basic to keep the cost down, so it often doesn't fit too great because you don't get a great deal of choice, and the quality of the materials of the equipment isn't always the best because no one's going to buy a really expensive mask that little Timmy is going to grow out of in a couple years' time. Another consideration is that dive computers don't have a child setting. Most dive computers only have a general idea of how decompression is going on inside of your adult body based on research and testing and making those numbers just a little bit more conservative for the recreational market. But we really don't have a dive computer that knows exactly what's going on in a child's tissues. So even though the dive computer may be saying that, yeah, everything's okay, that doesn't guarantee that everything is actually okay inside of their body. And finally, probably the most important question to consider is this something that the kid actually wants to do, or is it just something that you want them to do? I've taught too many children who just aren't particularly into it, and they're just doing it because their parents want them to. It is a great hobby to share as a family, to go and do something abroad, but it's important that the child is diving because they want to. Try and let them discover scuba diving because they want to. Show them the door, but don't push them through it. But what do you think about children and scuba diving? When for you is too soon? It is an impossible question to give a definitive answer, but maybe we can come to some kind of consensus down in the comments, because only good things ever happen in the comment sections on YouTube videos. Anyway, thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.